Okay, so this is a quick test of the jack branch for Musescore 4. So this is jack audio MIDI branch. This is from a pull request to re-implement jack MIDI and audio, and this iteration has introduced jack transport, which is, I think, the really big feature that matters the most. So my argument is that with jack transport, that is the ability to play the playhead from any other jack transport aware application like a DAW, and I've tested this with Q-Tractor and Ardor, and it works for both, or from the Q-Jack control transporter, any other jack transport interface, you should be able to synchronize applications. So in that respect, you wouldn't need to necessarily have MIDI output from Musescore. You could just use a digital audio workstation, which is intended for comprehensive MIDI music. You could synchronize the two applications and they would play in synchronization, and the output from Musescore could be funneled into the digital audio workstation. Everything could be mixed together live, or at least everything could be composed live, and for high fidelity you could render out the individual application outputs and then bring those together for final mixing. But that in that way you wouldn't really need to create a bunch of MIDI channel output controls and channel selection options inside of Musescore. You could just get a stereo output, use Musescore as an instrument interface for its own sounds and its own, whatever VSTs you can run inside of it, and then output that stereo output to be used in another application in Mixdown. And the other application, such as a digital audio workstation, could deal with MIDI instrumentation and MIDI data and MIDI controllers and all that kind of stuff that you use a DAW for. I'm afraid of this push to create MIDI interface inside of Musescore, because I think it's a bridge too far. You're really asking to make a DAW layer inside of Musescore 4. I don't think that's part of the, I doubt very much that that's part of the future of the project. Now, it used to have some MIDI control, but that was when the play engine was a MIDI play engine. Now it isn't. It's play from notation. So given that, I think that really the solution is jack transport. So with this enabled, here's what I've been able to do. And I'm just going to demonstrate a little bit of what I found. The first thing I want to point out is that there seems to be about a 250 millisecond delay in Musescore's playback. It is a static delay. And what that means is that if you create an offset of approximately 250 milliseconds at the beginning of the track, and I did this with a 1/16 bar at 120, what you can do is you create this static offset such that it doesn't matter where you play from the transporter or the DAW as master, it will always synchronize. Okay, you need that initial offset, and then from there it will always synchronize from the master that's controlling the jack transport. So I did it here with a single 16th note offset, and actually this is what it is it's a 1/16 offset. But I actually put like an eighth note offset in the other applications, so that this would play a little bit ahead of that. And the reason why I did that is that I was able to then synchronize, at least in DAW, that all the measure numbers line up. So if I have a 16th offset here and an 8th offset there, and I just know that that's the way this has to work, that's really no big deal to nudge and get synchronicity, right? So now all of my measures line up between this and the digital audio workstation so that the music is starting at measure 2. Now, some of you will look at this and say this is really, really hacky. But the truth of the matter is that whenever you're working in a digital audio workstation to sync to picture, it's already hacky. You're always dealing with initial measures where you're going to have your template set up if you're running from template, and you'll have wiggles set up on all of your MIDI controllers for those individual instruments, so that there's data within the file already from the beginning, indicating at least a beginning level for the controllers. That is pretty normal. I mean, that's how you do professional level work whenever you're composing from DAW to picture. So this sort of thing is really similar. It's a similar kind of issue. You're just dealing with timing offset. It seems to be universal. I tried this on a couple of different systems and it came out the same way every time. I don't really know that there's a solution to that because it is a delay and it's Musescore's problem. You probably really just need to deal with some kind of an offset. I don't really know what you can do to resolve that in terms of synchronization. It's really not a big deal though, because whenever I go to do a final render from this, all I have to do is delete this first measure, render everything out, or at least copy the file, delete the first measure, render everything out, and then I drop it in the DAW at measure 2, where all of the other synchronized data is at. And of course, from DAW, you can start the project. You can put a project marker at measure 2 so that when you render that out, it's actually in synchronization with picture. Now, with respect to picture, I'm using Blender as my video playback, and here I'm using an offset of 6 frames. And it was 3 frames initially, but in order to account for this first measure, I bumped it over another set of 3 frames, and then I added that 8th note delay in the digital audio workstation, and just a 16th here, 1 measure for each. So if you don't understand that, it's really not a big deal, but there is about a 250 millisecond delay when you're running in real-time playback. Now, as for what the problems are, I'm going to play this back, and you're going to hear that there are issues with cutting out. So if I play this from the video player using Blender as the master to the jack transport, this will start the playhead not only in Blender for the video, but also in Musescore. And you'll hear a number of artifacts, particularly dealing with dynamics cutting in and out. Okay, so you can see those issues there. Now, what's curious about this is that if I play directly from Musescore, now there is no master control right now with this particular iteration. Whenever you hit play on the playhead from Musescore, it does not control the jack transport. That's bad because we probably want to have that control. It's good, though, because you can now hear what this sounds like outside of transport. It actually works fine. There's nothing wrong with the file. So if I go to the beginning, Okay, so you can see the playback works just fine in Musescore. This isn't a problem with this build. It's a problem with the jack transport. So I really don't know what happens on the back end there, what's going on in terms of some sort of buffering whenever it's playing from jack transport. I assume it probably has something to do with the way Musescore is interpreting where the playhead is at and the fact that it's being controlled by an outside source. And how that affects the play from notation engine. But I don't know what that means. I really don't know what it is. But anyway, that's where we're at. Now, is this workable? I mean, it is. It's kind of annoying, but it is workable. It's more workable than the situation we had before, where you would have to make a map of your music, put that into Musescore, and then compose apart from picture, just using indications that you might type in text inside of the template so that you know where things are happening, and then writing apart from the kind of like we did, they used to do in the old days. I mean, the very first film score that I wrote over 20 years ago, that's what we were doing, because we didn't have a lot of tools yet. It was just starting to become normal for Finale and Sibelius at that time to have video playback. But now it's a normal thing. So can you use it in this build, in this iteration, this test build? Yeah, we're getting there. It's getting really close to, I think, what we're trying to achieve. You could compose, you can play. And I just want to point this out. If I'm playing from the playhead here, and I just jump ahead, and I stop, I can seek anywhere on the timeline in Blender and hit play, and it will play accurately from the right spot. That does work. It does seek properly from the DAW and from the video player to the actual location, and including the offset that we had at the very beginning, which is a little bit of a puzzlement to me, but it does work. That capability is there. It accurately begins. So you can start at a section and kind of get the gist of it and use the playback for segments at a time, even with the cutting in and out. At least gives you an idea. Then you can go back and listen to the file for fidelity to make sure that everything is as you want it. But anyway, that's what we've achieved so far. Just wanted to give an update on what the progress is and what the problems are. And we'll see where we go in terms of this development. Big shout out to the developer that's working on this. This is very much needed, and I really do hope that this continues and we end up in a workable place. Even, you know what? Even if this is only in a branch and they never implement it into Musescore, I think that would be tragic. I'm afraid that the developers will see this as a Linux-only, Jack-only kind of feature and therefore not worthy. And then they'll wait on someone to come up with some other kind of development approach that will probably never incorporate synchronization. My guess is that they'll come up with a video player, and that will be the end of it. And there will never really be synchronization between this or a digital audio workstation. I think it would be tragic to leave it out of the project just because it's Linux only or Jack only, and that doesn't serve the interests of Windows and Mac. Given the fact that there are features in Windows and Mac that do not work on Linux, I think it would be unfair, flatly unfair. I think that if this works for us, it ought to be implemented in the master trunk. But if it isn't, I hope this branch continues along, and I will be getting my iterations of Musescore from this branch, this fork, rather than from the master, because it's just ill-equipped to do the kind of work that I need to do. So anyway, that's where we're at. Really great stuff going on here. Some issues to work out, obviously. Hopefully this gives a little bit of feedback on maybe where to seek to search out those problems on subsequent builds. So anyway, good luck with that. Happy mixing and happy composing.